Taking photos when you travel is about a whole lot more than just making pretty pictures. It's also about telling the story of your adventures and of your experiences. In this video, I'm going to show you how to think a little bit differently about how you create your travel photos so that at the end of your trip, you have a series of photos that together tell your story. Hi, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Diane, and this is the PhotoFluent channel. The goal here is to help you turn down the volume of your inner critic, get creative with your camera, so that you can create beautiful photos that truly capture the memories of what you experience. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications because a new video comes out every single week. Okay, let's jump into one of my favorite topics, and that is storytelling with your travel photos. Now, if you're like me, when you travel, it's not all about creating those beautiful wall-worthy print photos. And of course, we all like to get those too. But another goal of mine when I travel with my camera is to capture the whole experience and tell the story so that when I show my photos to someone later, they actually feel like they were there with me. I want my photos to be about something, not just of something. I want my photos to evoke emotion and questions. And what that means is instead of just thinking about one photo at a time, I think about a series or a set of photos. And your goal with this set is to kind of fill in the details of the entire experience. So for example, I love France. I'm not sure if you've heard. And one of my favorite places in France is Bordeaux. So the first time I went to Bordeaux, I was doing a research trip because my husband and I were going to move to France for a year. And we had a short list of cities that we were considering, and Bordeaux was one of them. So when we went to Bordeaux, I went with my sister-in-law. He doesn't love to travel. That's a whole other story. But I wanted him to feel like he was there with me because he wasn't there with me, but he was deciding along with me where we were going to live. So this is one of the first experiences I had where I really wanted the viewer, my husband, to feel like he'd seen it all. Usually I would see something and think if it's wall-worthy, I'll take a photo because it's beautiful. But all the gory details, I just didn't worry about. I didn't think they would make pretty or gorgeous photos. But this trip really shifted my mind to more of a documentary style. So now all of a sudden, I wanted pictures of the transportation we took, which was their tram system. I wanted pictures of the park, of the restaurants, of the wine, and the canelés, these little cakes they're known for. I wanted him to really get all of the details. Now, I tend to focus on those details, like the little cakes, like the texture of the brick on the wall of a building. But you also want to take a step back and give context to all those details, right? So you want an overview of the entrance of the park or of the whole plaza of that particular area in Bordeaux, of the whole building to show the architecture. Then you want to get in and capture those details. Sometimes you want details that fill the frame. Sometimes you want details with a little context so it shows scale and what else is going on around it. And every once in a while, it's a good idea to kind of take a step back, take a look at the photos you have and decide, is there something missing? Now, I'm not saying to remove yourself from the moment and be so focused on your photos that you're constantly looking at the back of your camera. That is not the purpose of travel at all. The purpose of travel is to be in the moment. But every once in a while, I found it's beneficial to just take a look at what you have. Because sometimes I'll find that, wow, I have so many details, but I don't have enough of the overview. Or I have a picture of this, but it doesn't include any context, so I'm not really sure exactly where it is. Okay, so the first step in telling your story while you're traveling is, of course, taking the photos. So I've given you some hints on different aspects, different angles, context, details, overview. Think about all that as you're taking the photos. Now, the second part of telling your story is to curate or cull all of those photos that you've taken. And that sometimes is the hardest part. So you get home and you might have hundreds or even thousands of photos. So which ones do you pick? Well, first I go through and take out all the ones I just don't like or that didn't turn out. And that's probably a good number of them. So once you get it down to the ones that you like, I don't ever really get rid of them. But if I'm going to take a portion of those to share with someone, to represent my story, then you have to kind of pull that together. You don't get 2,000 photos and put them in a slideshow and show somebody. That's just cruel. You want to really represent the main components. So once you get it down to the ones that you like, now start to think, what do they contribute to the story? What part of my experience is this photo documenting? Does it evoke questions or feeling? Does it make that person feel like they're right there alongside with me in Bordeaux? And when it comes to how many, that's really up to you too. What do you do with those photos when you're done? Well, one of the things I love to do is print photo books. And you don't want a photo book that's this thick. So you have to pull it in by how big you want your book, how expensive you want your book, basically. So that helps give you some guidelines. Now, the other thing I love to do is slideshows. Because as much as I love books, they can be expensive, and you can't just send a book to everybody you know, unless you're Jeff Bezos, maybe. But a slideshow you can create and digitally send to everybody. And there's music, they're just beautiful. So a slideshow, you have a little more flexibility in the number, except that suddenly if you have hundreds of photos, it's like a 20-minute slideshow, and that's a lot to ask people. So I like to pull it in by time, and a 5 or 10-minute slideshow is a little more reasonable. Even 10 minutes is kind of pushing it. So let's take a look at my photos of Bordeaux. Okay, here we are over in Lightroom, and this is where I both organize and edit all of my photos. And I thought it would be helpful to just show you a quick version of how I kind of cull and curate my photos. Not the full version, that's a whole workflow video, which we will do at some point. So this is my research trip to Bordeaux. I was going there, like I said, to pick the place where we wanted to live. I went with my sister-in-law. This is her. Hi, Rhonda. And I wanted to get as much information back to my husband so that he could help me make the decision. So again, it's kind of like he was there with me through my camera. And since I did it this way with him, I really started doing it more like this whenever I traveled. I found that I also enjoyed going back to these photos and seeing the details and reliving the experience. So it kind of changed the way I took photos this trip. Here are all of the photos, and you can see there's little stars. So what I generally do is I do the first sweep and I take out all the worst ones. So if they just didn't turn out because of exposure, or like this one, I don't even know what it is. It's just boring. So they don't make the cut. And then the ones that do make the cut, I go back and pick my favorites. And then from the favorites, I might go through and edit them. And they will go into a collection. I use collections a lot in Lightroom. If you're not familiar, don't worry. It's just basically a folder. So the finals from my Bordeaux selections get their own collection. Which ones make the cut? Well, that's really up to you. Remember, you're the artist, you're the storyteller, but part of it is, do you like the photo? And then the other part is, how many do you need to tell that component of the story? Let's take an example of this wine tasting. So we went on a wine tour, and it starts with this beautiful chateau and ends somewhere down here at the wine tasting. So I might even select those and look at them kind of separate. I like the overview of the chateau because you approach the chateau. This is where it all happens. This is the hub of the wine tasting. Here are a lot of the auxiliary buildings. You know, it's not that interesting of a picture, but it does give you some information. So that's kind of how I sort through these. This one doesn't really appeal to me as far as interest level. I took a whole lot of details because then later you go back and you can edit them, enhance them and make them better, and decide which of the details are most important. So I decided on the chateau. I also like the wine barrels here. And you'll see I took several different views of the wine barrels, but this was the one I liked the best. Gives you some scale and how many of them there are. And then I took some also of the winemaking process. These were not easy photos because it's dark in there. So you don't have a tripod and lights. So you just have to do the best you can. You can see I have a lot of wine barrels. And I picked the ones out of those that A, I liked the best, and B, that really contributed the most. So I liked this one because it gives a little scale, gives you some number of barrels. This one gives the name of the winery. And that is something I always suggest, getting a picture of a sign or specifically where you are, because it's something you just don't remember later. And then from the tour, we went to a wine tasting. And I wanted the person who was pouring the wine, I wanted the wine itself, and then I took some also of the view out of the window behind her. So that gives all the different aspects. And the reason I chose the ones I did like this photo of her. And then I also liked really honing in on the detail of her grasping that glass as she's about to hand it to us. So then you can see there's lots of the vineyards, and we had a tour there too. And I like to get his face, who he is, but a vineyard works so much with his hands. His hands are so important, and the way he holds the vines and works with the vines, that was a very important component. So I made sure I had a photo of that. And then you can see more as we walk through the streets, the transportation, all of the things that I wanted him to see. The river that goes through Bordeaux. I really wanted to get the iconic structures that we saw, the park, different neighborhoods. This is kind of an iconic, the Mire d'eau. It's a fountain that mists up. And so when it's not misting, it's very reflective, a mirror. And then when it's misting, people kind of run through it, and it gives this really interesting effect to the tram and to the city. So I also took photos of the wine and cannelés because that is so important to Bordeaux, and that happened to be our dinner one night. So these two made the cut because I felt like it was key to the story. Now, you from the outside might look at that and say, I don't even know why that's important. But I was there and I know why it was important. So that's why I say the culling is a very personal experience. There's no right or wrong way. But I hope by showing you how I do it, that kind of helps you figure out your own system for doing it. So out of all of the Bordeaux photos, the ones that made the cut ended up being about 81. So 81 made the cut. They go into their own collection. That in itself might be an okay sized slideshow if you're going to share it with family and friends. I wanted to make an abbreviated example slideshow for you, so I further cut it down to 42, so it would just be short, and that is what this collection is. So you can see this vintner made a big impact on me. He made the final cut. Some of the really iconic architecture of Bordeaux made the final cut, and then of course some of the wine components, a lot of the wine components made the final cut. So I'm going to show you that slideshow so you can see from the photo creation to the culling to the creation of the final product, what it looks like. Okay, I hope walking through my process of storytelling with travel photos was fun for you. My question to you is storytelling with your photos important to you when you travel? If yes, give me a like on the video, and then let me know in the comments, what details do you find are most important? Now, if you need some more tips and inspiration to get out your camera so that you're ready for that next trip, make sure you watch my video, 5 photo tips that every traveler should know. I will link to it below in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.